It started like any other dry summer morning on the ranch. The golden sun rose slow over the hills, lighting up the land I've poured my soul into. My barn, my livestock, every inch of soil out here. This wasn't just property. This was my family's legacy. My great-granddad built the first shed with his bare hands. I've added to it, preserved it, fought for it. Never in my wildest thoughts did I imagine I'd be fighting for it like this. The tension with the HOA had been brewing for months. You'd think way out in rural Texas, an HOA wouldn't even be a thing, but this new wave of city folks came in, buying up parcels, forming their little committee like they ran the whole county. At first, it was just noise complaints. Then came the letters about my fencing, the aesthetic violations, and their demands that I get rid of my cattle. Trailer? I laughed. Until they started getting serious. Karen was their self-appointed president. Blonde, 50-something, always dressed like she was going to sue someone. She moved in from California and thought her suburban playbook applied out here in the wild. I didn't pay her any mind till she stepped onto my land. At first, she brought me a petition. She wanted me to shut down my barn operations on weekends because of the smell. The smell of horses. On a ranch, I told her if she didn't like the smell of livestock, she shouldn't have bought a house next to people who raise M. She didn't take kindly to that week. Someone slashed my fencing. 3 of my heifers got out and nearly ended up on the highway. I knew it was her or someone she sent, but I had no proof. Then came the animal control. Complaints Anonymous, of course. Officers came out, did their checks, and every time they found nothing wrong. My animals are cared for better than some folks care for their own kids, but the attacks didn't stop. One night, I caught a figure in the dark near my hay shed. I had my rifle with me, always do when I walked the property. Whoever it was took off, but not before I found an empty gas can and a half-lit match on the ground. That's when I knew this wasn't just harassment. This was war. I installed cameras, fortified the barn, made sure my kids stayed with their aunt in town. My wife, God bless her, begged me to sell and leave. But I wasn't about to be chased off the land my family bled for. 2 days later, Karen came back, but this time she didn't come with a clipboard. She came with a plan to destroy everything, and I was ready. It was just past 2 a.m. when I heard the motion alarm chime. The dogs, usually lazy until dawn, were barking like their lives depended on it. I grabbed the shotgun from beside the door, flicked off the safety, and stepped into the thick dark. Moonlight caught the edge of the barn roof, but most of the property was cloaked in shadows. I moved fast and quiet across the yard, boots crunching dry earth. The air smelled like diesel. My gut twisted as I rounded the barn. I saw her at the base of the sidewall, pouring gasoline from a red can. She was dressed in black, face half covered with a scarf, like she thought she was in some movie, but it was her. No doubt, I shouted. Stop right there. She froze, turned, and for a split second, I saw a look in her eyes that chilled me worse than the night air. No fear. Just rage. Controlled, focused. Like this wasn't a breakdown, it was a mission. You don't belong here anymore, she hissed. We gave you chances. You ignored every one. She dropped the empty gas can and reached into her coat. My heart stopped. I raised the shotgun, finger hovering the trigger. What's in your hand, Karen? She didn't answer. I'm telling. You don't move. I stepped closer. That's when I saw it. A lighter. Her thumb was already flicking it, spark after spark. She was trying to light it. Right there, standing in a pool of gas, next to the wooden barn that held 12 horses, for calves and every tool and feed sack I owned. That barn wasn't just wood and nails. It was life. My son's therapy horse was inside. He's autistic, only speaks full sentences when he's with that horse. And she was about to set it all on fire like it was her, right? I said, drop IT. Her voice was calm, too calm. You brought this on yourself. She struck the lighter. A ganned flame burst to life. I didn't think. I didn't blink. I pulled the trigger. The shot echoed like thunder across the hills. She screamed, stumbled back, the lighter flying from her hand into the dirt. She was hit. Lower leg, screaming, clutching her thigh, writhing on the ground. I kicked the lighter away and stomped out the small patch of fire it started. My heart was hammering. My chest felt like it would rip open. I'd shot someone, but she was still alive, and if I hadn't, everything I loved would have burned. I called the sheriff myself, and I stood there shaking, guarding the barn. The horses, the legacy. Until the red and blue lights arrived, the sirens came screaming down the gravel road within 10 minutes. Red and blue tore through the blackness like judgment itself. I stood at the end of the drive, shotgun on the ground, hands raised. I wasn't about to give them a reason to treat me like the criminal. Karen was still on the ground near the barn, groaning and cursing through clenched teeth. Blood pooled beneath her thigh, dark and spreading. She wasn't dying, but she sure as hell wasn't getting up either. Deputy Ramos was the first to step out of his cruiser. I've known him for years. Our kids went to school together. Still, his hand hovered near his holster when he approached. "She had a lighter," I said. Voice hoarse. The whole walls soaked in gas. Cameras caught everything. He didn't say a word, just looked past me toward the barn. Toward Karen lying there, one leg twisted under her body like a broken doll. The look on his face shifted, just a little, not pity, not surprise, just cold understanding. 2 more cruisers pulled up. EMTs rushed over and began treating her. One of them shook his head and muttered something about the smell of gasoline. That was all the confirmation I needed. Karen was still conscious, eyes darting like a cornered animal. He shot me for no reason. I was just walking. He ambushed me. Lies right to the end. I stepped back, stayed quiet. Ramos told me to sit by the porch while they collected statements. He reviewed the footage from my camera system. Thank God I'd installed those 2 days earlier. One angle showed her pouring gas. Her intentions couldn't have been clearer if she'd worn a sign that said arsonist. After an hour of interviews, Ramos came back to me, jaw tight. "She's going to the hospital. You're not under arrest. Not tonight. Not tonight." That stuck. With me, I nodded. "Am I going to lose my license?" "You acted in defense of life and property," he said slowly. "But this is going to get messy." He wasn't wrong. By morning, the local Facebook groups were already on fire. Rumors spread like sparks in dry brush. Rancher shoots unarmed woman. Local HOA leader nearly killed in late-night dispute. Was it self-defense or vigilante justice? They didn't know the truth. They didn't want to know. The HOA, of course, rallied around her. Claimed she was just there to check a boundary marker. Claimed I'd set her up. They brought in a lawyer from Houston, loud and smug, and held a press conference at the community center before noon. Painted Karen like a saint and me like a gun-happy hillbilly with a vendetta. I couldn't believe it. The woman tried to burn down my barn, with animals inside, with my son's horse inside, but the media, they wanted blood. And now, it wasn't just about Karen. It was about me, about whether the justice system would protect someone like me or bury me. By the end of that week, I couldn't walk into town without someone whispering behind my back. The grocery store clerk who used to greet me with a smile barely made eye contact. The feed store owner asked me carefully if I was still having trouble with them. HOA folks, my own neighbors, the same ones who came to my barbecue. Last year were posting justice for Karen on their front lawns. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was headlines, emotion, and that Karen was lying in a hospital bed, milking sympathy, like a seasoned actress. Her lawyer went on the news claiming she had PTSD, that she feared for her life, that I had a history of hostility toward the community. What hostility? Refusing to remove my livestock because they didn't like the smell. The sheriff's office kept their mouths shut. Ramos told me the DA hadn't decided whether to press charges. Meanwhile, Karen's people kept pushing. Photos of her bandaged leg, her crying in a hospital gown. They wanted the world to think I'd hunted her down in cold blood. But I had something they didn't, the truth and video, so I did something. I never thought I'd do. I posted my own footage. No fancy lawyers, no press conference. Just the raw camera feed of her pouring gas, flicking that lighter, and me yelling at her to stop. I uploaded it to Facebook, to YouTube, even Reddit. Within 24 hours, it exploded. People saw it for what it was. She was going to burn the barn down. That's attempted arson with animals inside. That man saved lives. Where's her accountability? Some news outlets tried to bury it. But the internet had already seen too much. It got to the point where even the sheriff's department couldn't ignore the pressure. Ramos called me 2 days later. "They're backing off," he said. "No charges, DA, just made it official." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat locked up. You did what you had to do, Ramos added. Doesn't mean it's over. They're still coming for you in civil court. Of course they were. Karen's lawyer filed a $2.3 million civil suit against me for emotional trauma and permanent physical injury. Said I used excessive force, and that I intended to maim. I wanted to scream. My barn still had scorch marks on the wall. My son still cried himself to sleep, afraid someone would come back to hurt his horse, and they were suing me. My wife was a rock, quiet, strong, holding us all together like glue under pressure. She looked at me one night as I stared out at the pasture and said, "This land's not just dirt and grass. It's our home. If we let them push us out, we'll never come back." She was right, so I called my lawyer, told him we'd fight. I wasn't done, not yet. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in spirit. There were no cattle grazing outside, no sunrise over the ridge, no smell of hay or dust, just white walls, sharp suits, and people who'd never known what it was like to defend something that couldn't defend itself. Karen sat at the plaintiff's table with her leg in a brace, her expression calm, smug, painted with just enough sadness to make a jury second-guess everything they knew. Her lawyer made her look like a victim, a concerned neighbor who got caught in the crosshairs of a gun-happy rancher. They showed pictures of her injuries, talked about her trauma, her fear. They skipped the gasoline, the lighter, the cameras. But when our turn came, my lawyer stood up, looked every juror in the eye, and played the video. No music, no edits, just the raw truth. There was Karen, sneaking across my field in the dead of night. There she was, pouring gas along the barn wall, flicking that lighter again and again as I shouted for her to stop. Then came the gunshot loud, final, and the silence that followed. The room held its breath. The jury saw what I saw, what anyone with a conscience would see. A woman who came to destroy, and a man who stopped her. When I took the stand, I didn't rehearse. I spoke from the gut. She wasn't just trespassing, I said, voice shaking. She was going to burn it all. My barn, my horses, my son's therapy animal. If I hadn't stopped her, people could have died. I didn't want to shoot. I begged her to stop, but she didn't. I looked right at Karen. She wanted to punish me because I didn't follow her rules, because I didn't roll over and let them erase my way of life. And now she wants to take even more, my money, my name, my future. No, not again. 3 days later, the jury came back. Not liable, turd civil suit, denied. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just walked out of that courtroom and breathed the free air. My boots hit the dirt road like they belonged there, because they did. Back home, the barn still stood. My son was there waiting, brushing his horse under the shade. He looked up when I pulled in, smiled, and ran to me. He doesn't speak much, but he hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for protecting her." That broke me. The land forgave. The animals carried on, and I knew I'd made the right choice. They say standing your ground makes you a monster, but sometimes standing your ground is the only way to stay human. I didn't want to shoot Karen, but I wasn't about to let her burn my life to the ground. Not then, not ever. I didn't want to shoot Karen, but I wasn't about to let her burn my life to the ground. Not then, not ever. What would you have done if someone came to destroy everything you loved? Was I right to defend my land, or did I go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more true stories like this, raw, emotional, and real, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because out here, truth ain't always pretty. But it always matters. Subscribe now for more real-life ranch justice. See you in the next one.